Hello, Franchise World. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 14. I'm Nick Powills with Charles Internicola. Thank you for joining us on another conversation. We're going to welcome in Leslie Kuban in a second from FranNet. And really for this conversation, if you want to participate, obviously post comments on Facebook. We're airing it live. If you're watching this after the fact, post your questions and we'll add Leslie to it. But Leslie, I want to bring you into the discussion. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. What I would like to start with is positioning what is going on in the franchise world right now, and is the shift as drastic due to COVID as maybe is being talked about, or is it business as usual? What are you seeing from where you sit?
Well, it's not business as usual, but that's not necessarily always a bad thing. A couple months ago, when this was all going down, we had our FranNet conference that was supposed to be in San Diego, California, but we quickly had to re-engineer that to a virtual space. And what we were hearing from our franchisor partners then and continue to hear is really a widespread of experiences. There are some businesses that are business as usual or close, maybe even exceeding what normal revenue expectations would be at this time. Like our clients in pest control franchises or pool maintenance franchises, house painting franchises, they've continued to have a very steady business. Others where you really have to have personal contact, you can't modify the business into any kind of a virtual delivery. They've been closed and some are still closed. And with COVID cases, spiking again, they may have to close again. So it's been a really wide range of experiences, but it has also been really interesting to see how some franchise brands have been able to pivot their services and offer some kind of modified delivery or virtual delivery. We've seen some of that quite successfully with some fitness franchise brands, but not all franchises, even in the same industry, are equal, and some didn't have the resources or know how to quickly pivot and are continuing to struggle. So it's really been a huge span of kinds of experiences that franchises are having, franchisees and franchisors.
Leslie, that's a great overview of the franchise space, franchisors, and you're in a unique position because you see both, right? Your work, franchisors, franchisees. Pre-COVID, I'm sure there was a typical phone call you get from a franchisee candidate. Hey, Leslie, I need you to help me with X. Has that conversation changed as we've gone through COVID? Has the conversation changed, their focus? What's the franchisee focus today?
Yeah, on candidates looking into franchising. By and large, certainly it's not even the white elephant in the room. It's important to be really open about this now normal. I don't think we're calling this a new normal anymore. This is here, and it's a part of our day-to-day lives and will be for a while. So certainly, I think people are still interested in going into business. We are extremely busy right now, busier than usual over summer months with prospective business owners exploring this. But certainly, there's this added question of, is this a business that could continue to be open or somewhat open when we have a public health event? We didn't even know to ask that as a question 6 months ago. So that's just a common part of the questioning process. Some people see some economic advantage to starting a business in times like this, with there being a larger labor pool to hire from, with interest rates being at really, basement bottom lows right now. Some of the incentives through the CARES Act for SBA financing to start businesses. So there's a pool of people that see it as a really good time to be exploring this. And then, of course, there are some that are going to put the brakes on all of this until there's some sense of, normalcy, and that's okay too.
If we flash back to 2008, obviously it's a different type of recessionary period because you don't have the emotional or health concerns that are tied to this one. But for brands that pushed down the pedal and said, hey, here's the opportunity to get people into the funnel, and hopefully facilitate some sort of agreement to get you in so that when the recession is over, you're starting to hit momentum. I was talking to a restaurant brand the other day, and I said, all right, true serums in your neck. What is the break-even point? Like, at what point are franchisees not stressing more? And he goes, 3 years. I said, right. So if we talk about signing a deal today, 3 years from now, the hope is that we're in a much different place than we are now. Some sort of solution's been created. So with that being said, if you reflect back to franchising in 2008 versus now, what are the differences? And then are you selling the prospects that you're not really buying a brand for tomorrow? You're buying it for 2021 at this point on training and getting going and everything else that goes into it. Are you starting to talk about 2021 in the way that you're talking to the candidate?
Certainly, if it is a brick and mortar type of business, that normal time trajectory from the signing of a franchise agreement to the time that you're actually opening the business easily is 6 to 12 months. What we haven't seen yet, but is a possibility, and we did see this 10 years ago coming out of the Great Recession, is there could be more real estate opportunities from businesses that are opting, not to open. They don't have the cash reserves. The PPP loan wasn't something they acquired or didn't meet their needs. There could be more flexibility in real estate opportunities coming online in the coming months, which could accelerate the real estate acquisition process. I do have a client that signed their franchise agreement for a brick and mortar business in April, and they already have an LOI looking to close on the real estate here pretty quickly. So that might be true in bricks and mortar businesses, but we've always done a lot of great business with service brands that don't have the brick and mortar component, where people could be up and running yet this year, go through training. We're seeing that is where we're hearing the best validation from franchisees is people in home service franchises have continued to, hold or mostly hold those revenues. So if that's the direction new franchisees are going, they could very well be up and running this fall. So it's not necessarily just a 2021 conversation.
Right.
Was that the question you asked?
No, that's good. That's good.
Leslie, I guess the thing that we always know is we don't know what we don't know. And then the question becomes, do we all over-index to one side of the aisle as we react, overreact, underreact to this? And so I appreciate your points about brick and mortar. I appreciate the fact that there will be opportunities in certain space, even in restaurant industries, right? No matter what has to be done with this, whether modification to real estate and whatnot. Leslie, different tone, diving in deeper. I work with a number of emerging brands. I know Nick does, and established. Everyone wants to know. You get the question all the time is, right? Especially for a startup brand, how do we get the brokers interested? What are they looking for in the conversations? And again, if you had hit your top 3 mistakes that a emerging franchise brand makes with you, and why you will never, ever show them again, ever talk about them again, what would be those 3 mistakes?
There's probably more than 3, but in my opinion, there are too many brands that start selling franchise licenses way too prematurely. In my personal opinion, I think a company, they should have proof of concept in more than just one area, more than just one location. They should have multiple locations in different types of areas. Maybe one is suburban, maybe one is more urban. In different climates, possibly can make a difference. So, the danger with young brands is that even though they have a one location or one area really humming along, it's not going to translate exactly like that into other areas that are different than where their home market is. So I think it's really important that franchisors show their proof of concept in different areas. Perhaps they have ideally a joint venture, kind of solution. It's really hard to show a brand when there's no validation. a brand, and it doesn't have to be 50 people, but I think to really get my attention, there needs to be some way that a franchise candidate can say how the business works beyond the corporate entities. So a franchisor finding a creative solution, like I said, with joint ventures, with people who are perhaps taking over some corporate locations. That is the kiss of death when the validation is terrible or there just is no validation for us to be able to work with. That's not something that I can say to my clients with confidence that this is a brand that is really ready to franchise.
I want to stay on this topic a little bit because there's a layer before this too, that as an industry, and nobody's going to hold the consultants accountable for this, but when Mr. or Mrs. Brand is coming to the table and saying, I want to become a franchise, I mean, you just set the table for how you find success. Yet so many consultants will franchise the business, will say franchising is easy. Then they teach them how to sell, which now if you're selling to someone, there's probably misaligned expectations automatically. So then validation is going to be poor. So that when it gets on your plate, you're going to say, you know what, I don't trust you, so I'm not going to put you in front of my client. So it's like there are best practices on how to grow. And then on the other swing of this, and I see this with a lot of brands, the first thing they talk about is leads. And then the second thing they talk about is how do we influence the brokers to sell this? And it shouldn't be we influence the brokers to sell this. It should be how do we position our brand and make sure the highlights are front and center, and then the question marks or the challenges that we're going through, that we have a point of view on this. Because that if the fundamentals aren't there, then it's going to be really hard for you to win anyway, even though you have all this pressure of all these franchisors probably hammering you on why aren't you pushing my brand? Mm-hmm. But you're like, I told you why. Go do the fundamentals. Do you think, I mean, it is what it is, that like some of these things are just never going to change in franchising because we treat it almost like we're selling packs of gum, that it's all about the numbers versus doing it right?
If there was to be a point of change, my personal opinion, it's around what it takes to franchise your company. In some of the registration states, speak more towards this. I think they go a little overboard in some cases, but it should take more to be a franchisor than just, having a few bucks to go out and hire a consultant to put your FDD and your training manuals together. If we're looking for change and consumer advocacy in the world of franchising, my opinion is that it starts at what you actually have to accomplish already to start selling franchise licenses. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but the net result of that would be that there are fewer franchisors out there, which I don't necessarily think would be a bad thing.
Leslie, I'm always and we get a ton of calls, right? And so I had a conversation yesterday with a very established corporate company. They manufacture a product, industrial type product, which no one would even know it's a business, right? And the conversation was that he's like, Charles, I'm not sure I should be franchising, but can I first see if people are interested? And my answer was, then don't franchise, maybe build out your sales force, right, internally. And his answer was, I've tried that, it doesn't work. We need someone vested. And then he pushed further and started to convince me that it could be a very interesting franchise model, meaning backed by an exclusive product, low startup cost, home operated business, could be a corporate executive leaving. And my question is this, can you tell me if the advice I gave was correct, which was, I said, look, it's like anything else, you need to season your brand. You're not going to be able just to gauge interest today. You may have people say they're interested, they won't sign up. But to me, it seems like it would be a broker-driven franchise sale in a positive way, in the sense that brokers would have the connections with leadership level corporate executives leaving corporate America and could actually introduce the brand. And then my point to him was, you really need at least 12 months to start building that trust and that relationship. And so my question is, am I missing something there? Do you agree with it? And anything else you'd recommend for a brand like that? Because I happen to think it's one of those hidden opportunities, but how do you get it to market? And how do you convince brokers that not to sell it, but hey, let's spend some time talking about it?
And we like unique concepts. So that can be, really attractive rather than just, one of 100 brands in the same space that is hard to see any real differentiation from one to the next. So like if it were me, I would be open to a conversation with a company like that. And, a seasoned broker is going to know the right questions to ask to see, is this the sort of business that someone who is new to business ownership, the kind of our prime, client that we really add the most value to is usually someone who's never owned their own business before. They've had a successful career in corporate life, but this is their first jaunt at doing something on their own. And it's why they're looking at something with some of the safety net features that a good franchise organization can bring. So we know a good experienced broker is going to have a sense of what that person's going to need. And is it the sort of business that someone who is new to that business and new to business ownership can learn and reach a level of success in a reasonable period of time? I mean, most of our clients who are new to this, they need to see some kind of success within a year or two. Most of our clients don't have 3 years to start to see some strong, positive momentum in their business. They're looking to see some income from whatever business they're getting into within the first, maybe the second year. So I think I could ask some questions about the business model to tell that unique opportunity who is considering growing through franchising if it's something that I think would fly with our clients. So I think, going to some good brokers and doing some informational interviews would be a smart thing for a company like that to do.
Leslie, just in every industry, there are good people and bad people, and unfortunately, in franchise brokerage, there are some who probably create a bad light on the industry. What I like about FranNet is that you are a franchisee too, so you've walked a day in the shoes of everyone that you're going to advise. You've put your money where your mouth is. Like it's already, the pathway is already there. There are some brokers that exist that are all about sell. And I've challenged, I wish this data point existed, of what is the equivalent to the back of the baseball card that says number of home runs hit. Like I want to know what data exists that, so the question is going to be, after I make my point, what data, what stats do you enjoy most about your personal journey? But I want to see how long is the average franchisee in place or in a system? What has been the average exit when you've lined them up properly that they can exit a business at some point? How many franchisees have positively exited where they've been able to sell something? Are there data points, are there personal data points that you hold true to yourself or that you watch over your history of helping people achieve business ownership?
So, and I know where you're coming from, and I don't, I'm not going to badmouth any of my competitor colleagues out there, but they're not all franchise brokerage organizations or franchise brokers are equal. And unfortunately, there are a lot of, I'd say, poorly trained or undertrained people who often have never owned their own business before that are now in our space, providing business advice when they probably are not qualified to do so. So it is all over the board. The franchise brokerage world is not a regulated business. It might be at some point. What I can say from FranNet's perspective is our reputation is something we're very proud of, and it's been a few years, but coming out of the downturn in the economy, we did a survey of all of the franchisors that we did business with over a 5-year period through the recession. And we were nervous about what the results were going to be. We were asking the questions, how are our placements doing? And the numbers, I believe, were 2 years coming out of that time frame, 92% of our clients that we had placed across our franchisor partners were still in business and growing. And 5 years later, 85% were still in business and growing. And gosh, I'd love to say that we can bat 100 with that. Nobody can, we were really pleased with the results of that. And I think that's attributed to our way of working with people is spending a lot of time with them before we start recommending any particular businesses. And we tell a lot of people that we can't help them, or that we can't say with a straight face or an honest face that now would be the timing for them to really look at going into their own business from a financial perspective, from the ability to commit to time. So I know I can speak for myself and my FranNet colleagues that we provide a great service, I think, to the community by helping a lot of people realize they shouldn't go into their own business.
Yeah.
And that's something we're very proud of.
Yeah, the negative space or the white space, there's the when they shouldn't go into. What are the typical reasons where just a red flag pops up for you and you're like, don't do this and now's not the time? I mean, aside from capital, but really at the mindset level.
I mean, not having family support. If someone has, if they're married, their spouse has to be on board with that. It's the right thing for your family to be going into business. So if the spousal support isn't there, if a spouse isn't willing to somewhat participate, in the education process, and they're really, against the idea, the chances of that person actually going into business anyway is pretty small. But it is something that should just be something that the person puts on the back burner, until their spouse can get on board with being supportive of that. Time commitment as well is a big factor. I think something dangerous that I see in franchise opportunity advertising is the ability to be an absentee owner. And, to date, I haven't really seen a business that can be run with no or almost no time. Yes, there are some good models out there that are more semi-passive, but still in the early months of getting any business going, especially when you're new to it, you've got to have some time that you can put forth to the business. So that can be a disqualifier right there, is if they're too busy with their job, with their family, with whatever else they have going on, if they don't have any time to put forth to get the business at least started, that's probably a non-starter from the beginning as well. And also a person's, mindset. I think that people who are stepping into business, by and large, who succeed and enjoy the experience, have more of the half glass full kind of mindset of things. If someone is if someone is looking for all the reasons not to go into a business, they're going to find that with every business. So I think someone's kind of, more positive orientation versus not is a mindset qualifier that we look for as well.
Leslie, you've given so much great advice. I think expecting more out of franchisors or franchising when you're franchising a business, it's a great point. I think obviously if you're a prospect, doing the right steps to make sure that you want to do this. I agree that there are not many passive franchise investments that exist unless maybe you're sitting in a private equity seat, which some of those are. But great advice. We greatly appreciate this conversation. Look forward to hearing where your story continues to go, and hopefully there's a lot more good news on its way. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you having me.
Leslie.
Okay.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.